I am concerned about the role of this group. First, I'll ask the question to whoever wishes to ask it. Who would determine the makeup of the collaborative? I mean, I read what's in it, but who determines who comes and goes?
For this working group, staff determined that following input from stakeholders.
What is staff?
The Charter Schools Division with input.
Charter Schools Division.
And with input from district leadership, yes.
Did you consciously, or was it not recommended, that regular LAUSD principals be part of the collaborative?
Well, I want to separate a couple things. In terms of the collaborative, this was called the working group. There is the resolution that wishes to renew the collaborative, and I think the makeup of that group is still to be determined.
By whom?
By the district staff and leadership. By the Charter Schools Division, ultimately the superintendent, unless the board wishes to direct that, I would say.
Well, you're operating under the board's authority right now.
Yes.
But since I don't see principals of our traditional schools even included in this, who are the most impacted people and affected people by charter schools, at least under Prop 39, and also the enrollment concerns around that, are they able to be included in this? A principal? I would say at least a representative of elementary, middle, and high school in the traditional school setting.
We would welcome their voices, absolutely.
And how would they let you know that they want their voices heard?
We would have to determine an appropriate process, sir.
So, Dr. McKenna, may I just comment? The selection of the variety of charter representatives was presented to me. My guidelines were I did not want it to be a particular group of charters, and I wanted representation across all charter schools that we authorized. So the group came back to me, and that's why we made sure that we had single schools represented as well. They weren't always under some organization that was larger than a particular school. I welcome the opportunity as it relates to co-location and other topics that impact our district principals for them to be on this. And I'll consult with the principals who are in co-locations or any other that are interested. This is work in progress. When this work was presented to me 5 months ago, the word that I heard the most was absence of trust. So the fact that the relationship had to be built and a starting point existed, it's not a closed door opportunity. This working group can become larger, and I will make sure that district principals are represented as well, and I appreciate your feedback. However, what has been discussed today, what has not been discussed to impact district schools in isolation. Everything that you authorized a few months ago still stands exactly the way it was. The 4 meetings they've had pretty much was around building relationships, and the trust is in the actions that we take. Words speak louder than any other, actions take precedence over this, so we will judge in the future if this relationship that has been built now will improve what can happen for our kids in the future. I think it's a missed opportunity if we do not take advantage of sharing best practices, which is the ultimate goal of this working relationship, is how can we find ways, like the gentleman said, on STEAM and STEM, of ways where we can enhance learning for the entire youth in the city. And I'll make sure that we have district representation as well.
And Ms. Action, if I may add to, just to make a point clear, that when we, in the past year and a half, separate from this process, in responding to a board-approved resolution about co-locations that Dr. Rodriguez sponsored and the board approved, we had several working group meetings, again, apart from this process, on co-locations that had parent, teacher, and principal representatives to inform the next steps in that process. So to respond to Dr. McKenna's point, those voices are critical, and the list before you today, as stated in the board materials, does not pertain to facilities-related arrangements at this point. Moving forward, should we be addressing that? And regardless, I think we've heard, and we're definitely open for those voices to join. Absolutely.
Well, let me go back to my question. I appreciate the superintendent's response, and it shows an ability to be, not an ability, but the willingness to be flexible and be aware of what concerns are. But I remain concerned. The district is the evaluator, not the evaluatee. Okay? And when I hear the term, the lack of trust, who is not trusting whom? And if I am the evaluator, if I'm the principal of a school, and the teacher says, I don't trust you as the evaluatee, or anybody, could be the custodian, anybody that I supervise, evaluate, I don't trust you. What do I do? It's a rhetorical question here, philosophical as well. What is my responsibility to gain trust when I already have the responsibility? And so if I'm not trusted, am I supposed to amend my oversight in order to be more trustworthy? Am I supposed to modify my expectations of excellence and transparency and accountability in order to be trusted? And what would I expect of my evaluatee? To be more transparent so that I can see what their product is, and therefore their outcome in relationship to children and parents, etc. So I want to be on record as the burden, I think, is maybe do well, if not try it. And maybe there's a third party involved in this that I won't get into now, but an evaluatee and evaluator process is not just two entities. There are other things involved in this. And the statute, as I understand it, the legal entity, gives the district, not just at a unified, the responsibility and authority of oversight and as the authorizer. I hope that the collaborative will be inclusive, because I don't think it was supposed to be exclusive only of charter school supporters and charter school operators. But maybe that's what the intent was. Now, is the collaborative to be advisory, or will it replace staff's ability to make decisions regarding oversight and authorization? I'll ask that of you, sir. Are they advisory to you and your department, or do they make determinations about what is appropriate for you to authorize and oversee?
Sure. We've had this discussion, and obviously in the future with the formation of a collaborative under the proposed resolution that's being considered, the group staff makes recommendations to the Board of Education. So the group will be advisory. We've used the term shared understanding. We've used the language in the materials where we've come to agreements. So wherever we can find that common ground, we want to be clear about that. And for students' benefit and for the public trust. But ultimately, staff signs the board reports that come to the Board of Education. And so, just in terms of a technical piece, that is still our responsibility.
No, yeah, it's okay. I'm listening to what you said. One more. I am, again, concerned that in the meaning of collaboration here, I'm still willing to be collaborative here.
Yes.
Do you have to be given approval for the process and procedure by the people who you're going to evaluate, of their approval to evaluate them? Do they have to, or is that their intent that they will establish how they will be evaluated? Or is it your intent to establish through the district and the board how we will evaluate? I liken it to, if I go to the doctor, I can tell the doctor what I'm feeling and what may be wrong, but I don't think it's my responsibility to tell the doctor how they should go about evaluating my condition. They need to evaluate me and tell me what I need and what I need to do better about. Otherwise, why would I need to see the doctor? Because that person has not only expertise but authority to tell me what, and I don't have to take it. And maybe that's not the purest example, but I don't think I should be prescribing for myself when I have to be given an assessment later as to whether my MRI is appropriate. And I said, Doctor, I don't need an MRI. That's not what you ought to be looking at. I think that the concern I have here is for the transparency of everything here. And without any admonishment to anybody, I have seen the unwillingness through legislation proposed in Sacramento of the charter school community to say, we oppose that. Almost every one of them, they oppose. And I'm saying, well, what are you opposing if it is only requesting transparency? Is there something that we don't need to know? See, being obvious is not the same as being transparent. And I think the obviousness of saying I resist, I resent, or maybe not resent, I oppose the legislation that asks for transparency, that's sort of obvious. So what is it that the transparency will reveal that is either unacceptable to the people being evaluated? I believe that the charter schools, as well as the regular schools, and this notion of comparing success of a charter school to other schools in the district that are less successful is a false narrative. Because I think every school ought to be able to stand on its own output, and we can be able to tell success from lack thereof without comparing it to anybody else. It's like I oppose ranking schools. I don't oppose having the community know what a school is and is not doing. But when you start ranking it and comparing it, there's a hierarchy there. It's almost somewhat of an elitism. It's almost a sense of I'm better and you're worse. If I'm better, see, mathematically you can only compare two objects, two things, one of two ways, one of three ways. Greater than, equal to, or less than. And if I feel I'm greater, if fortiori, reason of a stronger argument, that means everything else is either equal to or less than me. And so my rank sometimes gives me the false assumption that I'm better off, as opposed to I have more resources, and therefore others are not expected to keep up. And it's okay if they don't, because it's who they are and where we are and those kinds of things. I'm always frustrated by the lack of equity and adequacy when we start operating in schools. And I'll finish it with this. I got up early this morning, which I always do, and I was watching this program, I guess it's brand new, on the anniversary, not the anniversary, but the commemorative of Martin Luther King and his assassination, which will be 50 years tomorrow. And I was there in that milieu at the time. I was a young person. And I remember the impact that had and the words that he spoke about justice. And I still believe that the greatest injustice today, still done to many people who inherited and were victims of separatism, separate but equal, all the way back to my segregated days, is the inadequacy of their education. He believed that was the equalizer, that through that, people with nothing, literally nothing, could at least learn how to get past having nothing. And there are lots of examples of that. People that came from humble circumstances with great education, not just a perfunctory thing. And what we have done here, not just in this, when we came up with the conclusion, whoever the we is, that our public schools were unsatisfactory, we still have not decided that that is an abomination, that there should be no such thing as an unsuccessful unsuccessful school. So we created an alternative to that. If the public schools won't work, why keep waiting for them to do it? I understand that. I don't want a child. I don't have any children, but if I had one, I wouldn't send him to an unsuccessful school, even if I were the principal. I would tell you that. I would make it successful so that my children and the children of my teachers and my custodial staff could attend the school. And I literally did that. That's not a brag, that's a fact. People were bringing their kids to the school that people used to be afraid of, terrified. And yet we still have schools that people avoid, and therefore this anxiousness to go someplace else. And this alternative is growing now. Come ye to me, but you will be safe. You will be saved. And when I look at the data says, well, the data looks the same, but they say, well, but we're no worse off than the school across the street, which is still struggling. That's another speech I've made before. I won't keep making it now. But I want to be careful about the collaborative being as transparent as they can and should be. I think they're all well-meaning people, as we all are here. What can we do to make sure that all of our schools are held to the same standards, and what are the consequences that we will provide? And the consequences are not always penalties. They may be more resources. They may be more training. There may be a different sort of alignment as to how students can be skills developed so that they really have these skills that we want them to have.
Indeed. Thank you, sir.